we've used foundation models, we've prompted them, we've maybe fine-tuned one. But I think training a foundation model from scratch is an entirely different endeavor. Like, I don't even know if I would like feel ready to take that on myself. It seems quite daunting, but still there are like many teams and companies doing that. Can you tell us a bit about like why they are doing that? Is it because they cannot find a suitable open source model to use, and what kind of problems are they trying to solve? Right, you mentioned in the beginning that like the foundation has to match what you're building, and so I'm also quite curious to learn like what kinds of issues or problems are they tackling?
There is such a wide range really of companies that are training foundational models right now, and not just the big names we all hear about. And the problems they're tackling, they're truly fascinating. But broadly speaking, we've seen 4 main types of cases. One would be companies simply building very small task-specific models for niche use cases. We also would see the organizations that are building in-house models for data control, privacy, and ownership reasons. Another one would be companies that are investing in internal expertise. And this is more of a long-term strategic move. And there are also those that are taking more of a hybrid approach. So they're mixing in-house training with fine-tuning open source or proprietary models. Now diving into the first category. There is a lot of companies that are very focused on solving some industry-specific problems. And here we talk to folks in healthcare, finance, manufacturing, even a governmental agency. So here they are not trying to build the next GPT-5. They're solving very targeted problems for a very specific context. Then the ownership, as I've mentioned, is another big theme. Many teams simply don't want to rely solely on the third-party tools. They want to have a visibility and the control over both models and the data. And that's, of course, especially important when you're working with some sensitive information or maybe regulated environments. And then there is the strategic angle. So a lot of companies told us that, they're building this capability, not just to like solve the problem today, but they're trying to make sure that they are ready for what's coming next. And it's all about growing the internal know-how, also attracting top talent and staying competitive, right, as the landscape shift. And finally, a lot of companies also are being kind of smart at combining approaches. So maybe they would train something in-house for one task, but fine-tune an existing model for another. So it's not like it's all or nothing. There is a flexibility and control. And, as I brought kind of at the beginning with your first question, actually having the right foundational model for the right task is essential.
Are you able to give us like some examples, like the companies that are focusing on like a specific, maybe like a niche application in the industry, like very targeted? Are you able like to name some names or like give examples that people might know?
So take DeepL, for instance. Most people would know them for their incredibly accurate translation tools. And what's cool is that they've been quite deliberate when it comes to, that they've been developing their large language model specifically for translation. And it's not, just the feature, it's actually the core of their entire product. And they've been quite early when it comes to, when they started working on this. And then there's Cleareye, which operates in the banking and financial industry. And they had a great quote, and I hope that I remember it pretty well, that if I have to solve a particular problem, I don't need 80 billion parameter model. So, for that, instead of going huge, they built a suite of smaller, very specialized models, and each one is kind of fine-tuned for things like fraud detection or translation analysis. But it's very like a focused, I would say, practical approach. Another great example, really interesting one, I can think of is Silurian, because they are building foundation models for air simulation. And this case is incredibly data sensitive, intensive in that case. And we are talking about like a single training data points being multiple gigabytes. So in their case, like the biggest challenge isn't really the model architecture, but it's the engineering part. Just, keeping the GPUs fed fast enough. So their work is, it's all about tackling those massive scale infrastructure problems. And I guess one more I can brought up would be Kaiko, working with medical imaging. And in their case, for example, they're dealing with the rare but incredibly important features in medical scans. So they use techniques like synthetic data generation to make sure that their models can actually learn to spot this very, subtle but critical patterns. And their foundation model work is hyper targeted to those medical cases.